All I've ever needed was 1 bar. I'm off and running!
It was a sunny morning in Paradise Cay, California. But behind the closed doors of a quiet home, the greatest comedian of our time was fighting a battle no one could see. Robin Williams, the man who made the world laugh, had just 24 hours left to live. Who could imagine that the voice behind Genie in Aladdin, the passion of Dead Poets Society, the warmth of Mrs. Doubtfire, would spend his final hours lost in silence, confusion, and despair? His death shocked the globe. But what if the world never really knew the truth? Because the final 24 hours of Robin Williams were nothing like what we imagined. This is the story of the day laughter died, and of the man whose pain was always hidden behind a smile. Robin McLaurin Williams was born on the 21st of July 1951 in Chicago, Illinois, a city that bustled with life, but for a small boy in a large, empty mansion, it was a world of silence. His father, Robert Fitzgerald Williams, was a senior executive at Ford Motor Company, and his mother, Laurie, a former model. On paper, Robin had everything. But in reality, he had almost no one. Raised in a wealthy yet emotionally distant household, Robin spent most of his days alone. The vast home he lived in had dozens of rooms, but none filled the void of his parents' absence. His father was always traveling for work. His mother, elegant and charismatic, was emotionally unavailable, more of a social figure than a maternal presence. Robin once said, "The only time I saw my mother laugh was when I made her laugh, so I became obsessed with it." He began to create characters, voices, imaginary friends, anything to hold back the loneliness. Humor became his shield, his defense, his only way to connect. But underneath it all, a silent plea echoed through the marble halls. "See me, don't leave me alone." At school, things weren't much better. He was shy, awkward, and often bullied. Despite his intelligence, he struggled to fit in. Other children didn't know what to make of his strange, rapid-fire wit. When his family moved to Detroit, Robin was sent to a private prep school, Detroit Country Day School, where he was known as the quiet kid. Ironically, the man who would one day fill stadiums with laughter was once voted least likely to succeed. He didn't protest. In fact, he believed it. That inner voice of doubt followed him for years, a whisper that told him he wasn't enough, that he had to perform to survive. Robin's mother encouraged him to watch classic comedy and variety shows, and it was there he found his first true mentors: Jonathan Winters, Red Skelton, Peter Sellers. He would mimic them for hours, retreating into personas because his own felt too vulnerable, too exposed. But what began as coping quickly turned into obsession. Every laugh he received was a bandage, every silence another wound. The laughter masked the boy who still cried himself to sleep. There's a photograph of young Robin, standing alone in the middle of his ornate living room, toys scattered at his feet, eyes searching somewhere far off. It's not the image of a spoiled child. It's a portrait of longing. He had the mansion, but not the warmth. The toys, but not the touch. The audience would come later but never fully fill the room. Robin's first stage wasn't lit by spotlights. It was the cafeteria table, the locker room, the bus ride home. Wherever he could make someone laugh, he felt safe. For a moment, he wasn't invisible. He existed. After high school, Robin enrolled at Claremont Men's College to study political science. But the classrooms felt like cages. The jokes spilled out anyway. The suits didn't fit. The lectures didn't land. He dropped out. Instead, he enrolled at College of Marin to study theater. That's where the transformation began. The boy who once mimicked others now began discovering a voice all his own. A wild voice, 1,000 voices. But it still wasn't easy. His first audition? Rejected? His second? Laughed off ironically, not in a good way. His third? Too weird, they said. Too quick, too manic, too much. He failed. Then failed again, and again, but he kept coming back. Because Robin wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing oxygen, and performance was how he breathed. In 1973, after years of scraping by and sleeping in cars between gigs, Robin did something extraordinary. He got accepted into the Juilliard School in New York City, one of only 2 students selected for their advanced program that year. The other student? Christopher Reeve. They became best friends, brothers in the storm. Reeve would later recall, "He was the fastest mind I'd ever met, but also the loneliest." At Juilliard, Robin's talent exploded, but even there, he stood out as uncontrollable. His teachers admired him, but no one could quite teach him. He didn't follow the script, he devoured it. He didn't perform a character, he became 5 at once. And still, he felt like an outsider. After 2 years, he left Juilliard before graduating. New York was too small, too rigid. He headed west to Los Angeles, where the chaos matched his energy. There, in dimly lit clubs, Robin found his battlefield: stand-up comedy. The stages were brutal, comics were heckled, booed, broken. But Robin turned pain into power. He didn't tell jokes. He became the joke, the story, the punchline, and the echo. He'd leap from British aristocrat to alien child to manic gorilla in seconds, never pausing to breathe. The crowd couldn't look away. But what they didn't know was this: the faster he moved, the more he outran the silence. Then, in 1978, it happened. A casting director saw him improvise during a guest spot on Happy Days. The character was Mork from Ork, a one-off alien joke. Robin turned it into lightning. He was cast in Mork and Mindy, and America went wild. The alien in rainbow suspenders, speaking nonsense, drinking with his finger. It wasn't just funny. It was genius. Almost overnight, Robin Williams went from underground comedy secret to household name. He was 27 years old. He had fame. He had money. He had validation. But he still didn't have peace. Because with every cheer, a question echoed inside him. Do they love me, or the voices I wear? And somewhere, deep inside the child who grew up in silence, the answer was still unclear. By the late 1982, Robin Williams was no longer just a comedian. He was a phenomenon. He had become the lightning in a bottle that every director, producer, and late-night host wanted to unleash. But with greatness came the grind. From Good Morning Vietnam to Dead Poets Society, Robin's performances weren't just entertaining, they were electric. He wasn't acting, he was possessed. His portrayal of Mr. Keating in Dead Poets was so raw, so honest, that students wrote real letters thanking him for changing their lives. And yet, when the cameras stopped rolling, Robin often stood alone. In 1991, he took on the Fisher King and Hook. In 1992, he gave life to the genie in Aladdin, a role that was 100% Robin, 0% script. He improvised nearly all of his lines, recorded over 16 hours of dialogue, and redefined what animation could feel like. Then came Mrs. Doubtfire, 1993, Jumanji, 1995, and Good Will Hunting, 1997, for which he finally won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. That night, as he clutched the golden statue, the world cheered. But backstage, Robin whispered, "Now what?" Because here's the truth no one saw. Fame gave Robin a platform, but it took something from him too. The expectations were relentless. Every room he entered, people expected magic. No space for silence. No space for sadness. And so, he kept performing, even in private. He once said, "The saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy, because they know what it feels like to feel absolutely worthless." He was everywhere: talk shows, charity events, voiceovers, indie films, commercials, Broadway. But the man inside was fraying. He worked constantly, not because he needed the money, but because he couldn't bear to be alone with himself. He filled the calendar so he wouldn't have to face the silence of Sunday mornings. Fellow actors noted how generous he was, giving money, time, even shelter to friends in need. But he rarely asked for help in return. His days were filled with laughter, but his nights were long, restless, and haunted. There's a story his close friend Billy Crystal once shared. After a standing ovation at a private event, Robin sat down next to him and muttered, "They loved me. Tonight, what about tomorrow?" He had achieved everything. He had conquered Hollywood. He had become a household name across continents. But like a man dancing on a wire in the sky, he never stopped balancing, never felt safe. He had it all except peace. Behind every standing ovation was a man unraveling. Robin Williams had long battled his demons, but in private. In the early 1000s, 980 seconds, at the peak of his fame, he fell into the grip of cocaine and alcohol. The fast-talking, wild-eyed comedy wasn't just a style, it was fueled by something darker. Then came the death of John Belushi in 1982, a friend, a warning, a wake-up call. Robin had been with him just hours before Belushi overdosed. It shook him. He quit drugs. He got clean. For a while. But sobriety didn't fix the void, it just cleared the haze. He continued working at a breakneck pace, 3 films a year, 4, sometimes more. He said yes to everything, even to the things he shouldn't have. His personal life began to crack. His first marriage to Valerie Velarde fell apart. She had stood by him during his rise, but fame took more than it gave. His second marriage to Marcia Garces, his former nanny, gave him children and stability, but even that couldn't survive the weight of Robin's inner collapse. Divorces, legal settlements, isolation. Then, in 2006, he relapsed. Alcohol crept back in, not in clubs or wild parties, but quietly, in hotel rooms after shows, on long nights when the laughter was gone. He checked himself into rehab, again. He emerged with a joke. It's not the getting clean that's hard, it's staying clean through life. But the cracks were deeper now. Then came the diagnosis that shattered him: not addiction, not depression, not even heart surgery. In 2014, Robin was told he had Parkinson's disease. The man whose craft depended on voice, movement, timing, clarity, was watching all of it slip away. But the diagnosis wasn't the full story. What doctors didn't know at the time was that Robin was suffering from Lewy Body Dementia, a rare, aggressive brain disease that mimics Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, but crueler. It attacks memory. It alters perception. It causes hallucinations. It erodes the very thing that made Robin his mind. His wife, Susan Schneider, would later recall. He was losing his mind, and he knew it. He began to forget lines. He had panic attacks on set. In the middle of filming Night at the Museum 3, he broke down crying, whispering, "I'm not me anymore." He would walk into rooms and forget why. He'd stare at scripts and see nothing but fog. Still, he tried to hide it. Still, he tried to make others laugh. But the fear was unbearable. Not of dying, of vanishing piece by piece, of becoming a stranger in his own skin. In the final months, he isolated himself more. He would wake up in the middle of the night screaming. He cried to his wife, "I just want to reboot my brain." The 10th of August 2014, he spent the evening alone in their home in Paradise Cay. His wife went to bed early. He kissed her goodnight, told her he loved her. At 11:42 p.m., he turned off his phone. The next morning, the 11th of August, she found him. The world stopped. News headlines said, "Suicide, 9th." But that wasn't the full story. Robin didn't just take his life. A disease took it from him slowly, cruelly, silently. In the autopsy report, doctors described it as one of the worst cases of Lewy body dementia we've ever seen. To the world, he had everything. But no one saw the war he was losing inside. Robin Williams is gone. But somehow, he's everywhere. He lives in the laughter of a child watching Aladdin for the first time. In the quiet rebellion of a teenager who just stood on their desk whispering, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." In the weary heart of someone who finds hope in his words, "You're only given a little spark of madness, you mustn't lose it." In the wake of his death, something unexpected happened. The world slowed down. People didn't just mourn, they remembered. Not just the movies, not just the jokes, but the man who gave them permission to laugh, to cry, to feel. His family turned their grief into legacy. His widow, Susan Schneider Williams, launched a mission to raise awareness about Lewy body dementia. She spoke not just of his death, but of his courage. His children, Zach, Zelda, and Cody, have each carried pieces of his fire through mental health advocacy, filmmaking, and the quiet act of simply continuing forward. Fans around the globe created murals, wrote letters, lit candles. Strangers hugged in movie theaters. Comedians openly discussed depression for the first time. Doctors began researching harder into the disease that stole him. Robin had spent his life trying to heal others through humor. In death, he helped people begin to heal themselves. He left behind a message. Kindness matters. Feeling deeply is not weakness. And sometimes, the funniest people carry the heaviest hearts. Even in his darkest moments, Robin never turned bitter. He never lashed out. He just gave. More than he had, until there was nothing left. And still, his echo remains. There's a scene in Good Will Hunting where his character, Sean, talks about love and loss. You're not perfect, and let me save you the suspense. This girl you met, she's not perfect either. The question is whether or not you're perfect for each other. It wasn't just acting. It was Robin, the man who knew life was messy, but lived it with grace anyway. He didn't get the peaceful old age he deserved, but he left the world better than he found it. And isn't that a kind of immortality? It began with silence. A bright morning in Paradise K. A door quietly closed. A voice, once larger than life, suddenly still. But now, we understand. Robin Williams didn't leave us empty. He left us full of memories, of laughter, of truths wrapped in comedy. He taught us that humor could be holy, that madness could be magical, that broken hearts could still offer joy to others, that problem della joys, and perhaps most powerfully, he taught us that those who give the most often hide the deepest wounds. So the question remains, can we truly see the people who make us laugh? Can we listen to the silence behind the jokes? Can we love them not just when they perform, but when they fall silent? If Robin's story moved you, if it made you feel, if it reminded you to check in on the friend who always seems okay, then let him live on through that action. Stand on your metaphorical desk, whisper your gratitude, and remember, the day the laughter died was not the end. It was the beginning of something quieter, deeper, and just as human. Oh, Captain, our Captain, thank you.